Hey, welcome to the Cultivate Church Planting Podcast. And before we get started, I want to take a minute to invite you to the upcoming CGN International Ministry Conference. This is June 22nd to 25th, and it's a gathering designed specifically for church leaders and their ministry teams to connect, collaborate, and grow together in a community of like-minded leaders. This year, we're going to have Alistair Begg as one of our main session teachers, along with a lot of other guests. Monday, the 22nd to the 25th in Temecula, California, at Reliance Church, with Pastor Ted Leavenworth. I hope you can all join us there. For more information, visit conference.calvarychapel.com. All right, let's get into the episode. All right, we're back with another episode of the Cultivate Church Planting Podcast, and I've got two smiling, good-looking fellows here with me. Pastor Bruce Zachary, who's part of the Cultivate core team, that is a expert in pretty much almost everything.
That is very kind.
And we have as our guest today...
Completely untrue, but very kind.
Yeah. We have as our guest today Pastor Ryan Marr, who is a pastor in St. Petersburg, Florida. We are here in Florida, the great state.
The great state.
The wonderful great state. And Ryan is here, and he's got an amazing church. We're here at his church recording. And so thanks, Ryan, for being on the podcast.
Yeah, I'm excited to hear how this works out.
Yeah, thanks for the hospitality, too.
Yeah.
Yeah, we're having a gathering here, a little CGN huddle gathering with some church leaders and pastors. And Ryan and his church have hosted us, and it's been amazing. And Bruce, once again, good to see you.
Oh, Brian, it's my pleasure to be with you. I always enjoy being with you. Yeah, Ryan, this place is enormous. You said this was a Walmart before it was converted?
It was an old Walmart building. So the
how many square feet?
It's a lot. I don't know if I can count that high. It's a lot. So just imagine a regular Walmart, not a super Walmart. And so the church started 2 church buildings ago, actually further than that. It was actually meeting in a school a long time ago. And then my wife started attending the church when it was meeting in a Sons of Italy lodge. So really small. She walked, her family would walk over to church. And so church has come many buildings later. Best probably location ever met, and that I was a part of. And there's probably people know more of the history than I do, was the church met in a warehouse district, and right next door is where they would cremate people. So the smoke would be going up, the ashes would be rising up. And then, when I was in high school, middle school, we'd be playing football out in there, and they're just burning people right next door.
Oh my goodness, it's like the apocalypse.
Okay, so you guys still use the blue light when somebody gets saved? Yeah, the blue lights go off?
So yeah, then it went across to a Winn-Dixie, and the church was growing pretty rapidly, and then the Walmart building became available. So Walmart deed restricted it. They don't want another supermarket in here, so they're just looking to get rid of the building.
Oh, is that what they do? They make it to where no other supermarkets can go in?
So it's a great deal for them. So if they can do a write-off, so the church at the time said, hey, we'll purchase it, and the leadership at the time decided, which really smartly, develop part of the building as they go. So they developed about 2/3 of the building, and then they left 1/3 of it just as a warehouse. And then when they raised enough money, then they developed the other part of the building. So it was over time. So it was a vision for kind of when you have the cash, we'll do what we need to do. And then they started doing that. But we owned it instead of leasing, which is the major difference.
See, that's the difference. The thing about owning, Bruce, and maybe you can contribute to this comment that I'm about to make.
I thought you was contributing to buying.
No, I was going to say the thing about owning is you have to actually have money to buy something, own something.
It's such a dilemma, isn't it? Yeah.
Bruce, church planting, because how long have you been in your church?
29 years. I just started my 29th year in February.
Yes.
Yeah.
Congratulations.
Amazing.
Thank you.
I'm not even 29 years old.
People who are watching the video, they're like, if you're listening to audio, then
you can get away
I'm
with
going
it.
to testify. He's not a day over
40-something.
I didn't even say. Yeah, Bruce, how do these... So here's the thing. We've got a wonderful church here. Just a lot of history, a lot of ministry. And we have... It's kind of like when you walk into this place, and just be honest here, Bruce, I'm going to be honest myself. Did you feel like any kind of a tinge of like jealousy of like, man, this place is pretty amazing. I wish this.
I thought it was amazing. I thought it was really impressive. Like the parking lot is so large, they use a tram system. And instead of Disney characters, there's
parked in Mickey Mouse.
names of prophets. Yeah. I'm parked in the Elisha lot, right next to the Isaiah lot.
Yeah.
No, it's a beautiful campus. Yeah. How many people would typically attend on a Sunday morning here? Adults. Let's start there.
Yeah, the church had a couple phases. Let's put it that way. And so, if you're in church ministry, you probably know what I'm talking about. So the church had many phases. So at the height of Calvary Chapel here, there's close to 4,000 people. So it really kind of justified itself at the time. Mm-hmm. That was the time too when the Calvary was that large. You're talking 20 years ago. Well, no, probably about 15 years ago. It was fairly large, and the church was growing. It was thriving. The non-denominational space was taking off.
Yeah, and so that was back in the day when it was.
That was back in the day. So Calvary kind of rode that wave. A non-denominational space. It was kind of new.
It was back during like Saddleback and Willow Creek and all that. It was like suburbs, and it's not suburbs around here though, is it?
No, we are the most densely populated county though in the state of Florida.
Oh, okay.
So the state of Florida has a lot of people that live here. Over 1 million people live in our county.
Wow.
Yeah, and Tampa's 4 million, right?
Yeah, Tampa's a lot. I mean, so there's just so many people. We are land kind of restricted, so we're a peninsula inside of a peninsula. Pinellas County is. So there's no new land, so everything's going up. But the time the church was really thriving and taking off, the leadership, smartly just took the next step of faith, and they're like, "Hey, we're going to get a bigger building. We're going to do this. We're going to do it in phases." And then at that point, some dynamics happened in the church, so there's not that many people here now. So right now we're running about 800 adults, maybe 100 and something kids and youth. Mm-hmm. I don't know.
And it's a beautiful campus.
It is beautiful
children's
campus.
Ministry space too.
Yeah, and Ryan wasn't you weren't the founding pastor.
I was not.
But you became the pastor. And, we've talked about this on another episode of our podcast. The transition, oftentimes you lose people, you gain people, and it kind of create the culture of the leadership, the pastor, the teacher, the worship team, the worship leader, and that sort of thing. Let's get back to young church planners who are out there. They're looking at Walmarts in their neighborhood, just drooling.
Yeah. No, listen,
what are you going to say to them?
I would say a couple of things.
Talk them out of it.
Yeah. So here's the couple of things I think are maybe helpful. Any type of transition, I'll talk about that real quick, just the clarity. I didn't drive all the people away. So, but any type of transition, and no matter if it's a good transition or a bad transition, so ours could have been a little bit better, to say the least. But one of the things that we had to do, anytime you do transition, I will say that the piece of advice was honor the past, live in the present, and prepare for the future. I think a lot of times when people come into transition, they just want to rip the carpet out and do something new.
Yeah, man, that's wisdom.
I don't recommend that. Give the people the opportunity to make a decision on what they want to do and what God's called them to do. I mean, part of the Calvary motto, God calls people to churches. And so any type of transition, it does take time, and you got to allow that to play out. So over that, I was just really patient. People have to make a decision. Has God called me here? Do I go with another pastor? Do I go to another church? And so that took a long time. So where we're at right now, the church is growing. Best advice I got, Doug Sutter from Calvary Fort Lauderdale. Uh-huh. He had told me, Ryan, it's going to take 5 years minimum for it to stabilize.
Yeah,
and
because he himself went through a large church transition.
Yeah, so
different context.
Yeah, yes, different context. Same kind of pain points, but I would say different quite a bit though. Yeah, so I would say to those guys, if you do get an opportunity, you do serving. The people that need to heal is your staff, your pastors, and your congregation. So just give them space to work through it, and just be faithful. Don't rush it. To the guys that want to get bigger buildings, here's what I would say. I have a really kind of small house, 1,300 square feet. I have 6 people living in there. And it's really, really tight. But my family's like, hey, we should get a bigger house. A bigger house costs a lot more. So you need more money to be able to operate the bigger house. So fortunately right now, we have no debt on the building.
And
we
to
own the
maintain
building.
it.
Yeah, and to maintain it. And the maintaining part of a building can weigh on you quite extensively. So right now, I'll give you one example. We have over 40 air conditioners on the roof. You're looking, 35 of them have to be replaced. Like they have to be replaced. The cost is over $1 million, easy to do that. Because the things that you don't know about, like, well, the Freon that is in them, you can't get anymore. They don't make it anymore. That's illegal to make it. So the government says you can't make this Freon. So those units have to be replaced. Mm-hmm. And so those are like
maybe
stressors.
Trump can say we can make the Freon now.
Maybe we can do that. He can maybe say something
Sorry,
about that.
I'll edit that out. But
So I would say the challenge, I would say, for people that want a bigger building is just more to maintain. Some people say, well, you build it, they will come. That's not going to happen either.
Yeah.
I would say what you want to invest into is your team, your staff. You want to invest into being better at what you're doing. And then over time, it should be a gradual increase if you see that. But don't try to jump 2-3 steps ahead.
Yeah.
That's where you get into a lot of trouble.
That's solid.
Can you say that thing again about the transition mentality, the past, present?
Yeah, so
Honoring
without giving out a ton of information of the transition, it wasn't incredibly smooth. However, though, one of the things I noticed in a transition of any sort, whether good or bad, okay, it doesn't matter, is that you have to think about the transition from different perspectives. The congregation, if they've been there, so the pastor that was before me, very dynamic speaker, really just commanding the audience. And he had a lot of people that really loved the way that he taught. I don't teach that way.
Yeah.
And so you have to give people time to make a decision on what they want to do. And so you've also, any type of like church drama or dynamics, people have to recover from that. Mm-hmm. And so what I learned through that whole transition period was give people the space. So the people that need it is your elders, your staff, and your congregation. And so it's so easy that you're like, man, I'm doing so much better. Well, is your congregation doing that much better? I mean, they've took a big shock to the system. Mm. And so what we did, all of our programs, I didn't change a lot of stuff. So we just honor the past. This is how this ministry was built. These are why people are here. This is what they expect. Yeah. They come here week after week after week. These are things that they've invested in, things that they believe in. So you honor the past. At the same time, while you're honoring the past, you got to live in the present. Hey, these are new means. This is new things that we got to do. Here's new problems that we have to solve. And at the same time is you're planning for the future. Okay. And so that took about 5 years to do that. I'm not in a rush, and you shouldn't be in a rush. I think when you're in a rush, you hurt a lot of people, and a lot of people you'll get hurt by. Yeah. So you're just allowing God to move in people's hearts, and then they know. It's just obvious that they know, and you release people that don't need to be there, and people that are here, you find out what God wants to do for the future. So I'll give you an example. We had an ESL program, which is English as a Second Language. It was ran by a group of people. They weren't. I don't think they're no longer here. They'll probably watch us and say, yeah, we're here the whole time. We just don't do it anymore. And we kind of stopped the program. So when all the transition happened, we stopped quite a bit of stuff. So the people that weren't doing it, we just, we had to stop a bunch of stuff. We just didn't have the manpower, or the people or the volunteers were gone. And so one of our missionaries had moved back, and they moved back, and they happened to teach English in a restricted country. And they have a master's degree in English. Him and his wife both do. And English as a second language. Mm-hmm. So I said, all right. He came back to the United States, and I said, hey, I have a great thing. And he thought I was like going to give him an opportunity to be like on staff and to teach. I said, no, I want you to do English as a second language. And what I think is living for the future means, who are the people that are a part of your congregation that God's gifted or has laid things on their heart, and how do I help them succeed? Now, I can't teach English as a second language, but this guy does really well at it. And I said, hey, what do you think about you helping people in our community, offering, we have a huge building. We do free English classes. I think this last year there were 32 different language groups. Over 70 people came in.
Wow.
And that's the first sign you see when you come on the campus is the ESL classes.
And so with that, we don't do a bait and switch. It's not like, hey, we got you now. We're going to tell you about God. So you're stuck here. I told him, do the best English class you could possibly do.
Yeah.
Help these people learn. And then we offer every single person, hey, would you like to stay in? We have a Bible study afterward. We'd love to invite you to church. And I've met so many people in the congregation that have come to church here because of the English class. So the future part is like people that are gifted, that God's given them gifting. How do I help them succeed in that way?
Yeah. Yeah. Going back to the ESL, what are the demographics of the community like?
So our community right now, it's Florida. So we do have, it's a mixing pot of different people. So there's a big Asian population that's here. So a lot of people from Vietnam.
Okay.
We did have a big Bosnian population here at one point.
Wow.
That was in the 90s. There was quite a few people. We do have a big Spanish, whether Central American, South American people that are here. But this area is horribly transit. People just don't stay. They come and they go. They come and they go. And so 32 languages. We've had people from Europe, Poland were here. I think I heard about that the other day. People from Ukraine.
Wow.
So there's just a big mixing pot.
So as you talk about that transient nature, how has that impacted ministry here? And how's that been for you? I mean, as people are coming and going.
That's a good question, because I'm here in Florida too, Ryan. And, you know, we have the snowbirds. I've talked about that before. And that's like no other place I've ever lived is like, for 5 months, you'll have this wonderful family and totally involved, you know, at church every Sunday, always talking to you afterward. Then all of a sudden,
they're gone.
Poof, they're gone. I'm like, what did I do? I chased them away. They're gone. Where have they been? You know, I'll talk to Lynn. I'll be like, where's we're asking about all these people. And then sure enough, 6 months, 7 months later, back like nothing ever happened. Hey, here we are.
I know snowbirds it is the season right now.
This is a good season.
Yeah, they're here. They're all here.
Yeah.
COVID, not so much. That season they were gone, but they're back. And then a lot of them will tell you, they're like, hey, we're going to be gone for a little bit of time. We'll see you later. We're snowbirds. They like to identify themselves as a special group of people.
Yeah.
Which is good. I love it.
Yeah.
They always have something good to contribute. They're looking for that. But you're talking about the diversity of the area?
Well, Bruce was talking about the diversity and then how you deal with the transient nature of people. Like they're here and gone. And I rudely not rudely, but I interrupted with the snowbird thing because I've experienced that transient kind of thing in our own church. And it's like, man, that's kind of tough to deal with. I
think with the transition that we went through as a church, I'm used to people coming and going. Let's just put it that way. I'm used to people saying, hey, it's nice but knowing you, we're going to go somewhere else. Yeah. And so I'm very used to, hey, if God's got somebody here, and that's what I tell them, hey, find a church. If it's not here, there's other great churches. Can I help you find one? Yeah. I want you to really plug into a local congregation.
Because you care about people at the end of the day. That's the job of a pastor. Let me ask you this. And Lynn and I joke, my wife Lynn and I joke about this all the time, because we'll get, in all the churches we've planted and the churches we've, I've pastored, you have those families that have been involved in the church for a certain period of time, they've got plugged in or whatever. And then they're like, hey, we want to have you over for dinner. and we're like, oh boy, because we've learned over time this is going to be a break up with us dinner. So it's like, they sit us down and say, well, we had one in Bellingham when we were there in Washington. They're like, we noticed that there was some homeless
like your
people
last
that were
meal before the execution.
It's like the Last Supper. And it's like, and I say, whoever dips his bread with me, and they say, that we noticed some homeless people have been coming in because we were kind of in a downtown area, and we have got kids, and we're gonna go to a church that's out in the county, and we just it's like all good, and we're like, God bless you, same thing you're saying. But I was telling them, I'm like, man, it'd just be better if they just said it. Like, we don't have to go to dinner. We don't have to, do all that. It's not like
go through the dance.
But
our very first Bible study, there were 5 people when we moved to Camarillo. We didn't know anybody, and at the end of the night, we were praying. And my wife's prayer is that when these people leave, that they'll be better than when they first came to the church.
That's
and
good.
So at the end of the night, I'm saying to Karen, like, we don't want them to leave, honey. And she's like, well, that's what God put in my heart.
She said when, not if, huh?
So that's what God put in my heart.
When the people get tired of your preaching and leave, we want them to.
I think having that attitude that you're talking about, that you want to help people for as long as they're here, and you have a loose grip.
The number one comment, too, in any type of transition, I will say, just be prepared for it, is at the transition, normally people leave for different reasons. Don't try to lump everybody together.
Right,
so
that's good.
Some people are like, hey, I've been through the same type of situation that's happening here. I just don't want to go through that. Some people are like, I just don't really like you, whatever it is. And you don't try to guess their motive. Just let it be.
Yeah.
So now what I'm seeing, 7 years later, there's a lot of people coming back. So they went out, they did what they're doing. And every time they come back, I'm friendly. And some people are like, hey, do you remember me? I don't.
Yeah.
There's one particular person I'm thinking of that came to me a couple weeks ago and they said, I was here and when you first started, you really weren't that good, but you've gotten a lot better.
Thank you, I think.
So we're going to stay around.
But that's probably true, right?
It is probably true. Yeah. So I don't take it offensively. It's like, you got to be open to hear the criticism of, you weren't as good as you are now. Yeah. Thank God that I'm progressing and growing, and realize that's part of the transition is you're transitioning, you're growing, you're in a new space that you've never been before.
Yeah.
So I try not to figure people out. It's not a good idea.
That's wise.
That's a good word, man, because people may not know this about pastors, and if you're a church planter out there, maybe you're a seasoned pastor, you're planning another church, or you're a young guy, you want to plant a church. What people don't realize about pastors is, if we're honest, a lot of us are insecure. We want approval. We want people to like us. I mean, that's human nature, obviously, but especially for pastors, it's like we kind of tend to, and this isn't right, I'm not saying it's right, we kind of tend to take that responsibility on us. Like if people leave the church, it's because of me. I could have done better. And it's almost like a destructive thought pattern, I think.
Could be, yeah.
Yeah.
Can I go down a different track?
Bruce, go down any track you want, my friend.
So Ryan, you got into this position as the lead pastor 7 years ago, but you've done a lot of ministry at the church. And in talking about the transition, I don't want to get into the details of the circumstances, but what are some of the lessons that you weren't prepared for the role of lead pastor? And that's really going to be very relevant for all the church planters that are listening.
And just to add to that, a lot of these guys that we're helping in the Cultivate program are serving at other churches, larger churches. They're in, youth ministry, they're in worship ministry, they're assistant pastors or whatever. And
a couple sociopastors.
Sociopathic pastors. But they want to, the God's calling them to go out. So that's a great question.
Yeah, what are some lessons that you wish you had been prepared for when you came into the role?
So
looking back.
Yeah, so thinking back, so you got to understand how nonprofits work. There's a lot of rules to nonprofits, like on the business side of it. A lot of pastors, you have to do everything. You got to be in charge of, filing the right paperwork. You got to do all this type of things.
Everything.
So I think one of the things I would tell somebody that was interested, spend some time with whoever does all your finances and just try to get a good grasp of how it's supposed to work.
Yeah,
that's gold.
That is a good word, huh?
So one of the mistakes you can make early on is not knowing how it works.
Yeah.
You don't know how it's supposed to work. And so I think that was a big learning lesson that I had to learn about on the job. Mm-hmm. And so what's the difference between a restricted and non-restricted fund? Should you have them or not? How do you best process the money? Now, one of the things I do here is I don't look. Now, we're a little bit larger, so I have 17 staff. I don't look on who gives what. Mm-hmm. I don't want to know.
Yeah.
And it's a more of a, not that I'm afraid that I would be, as James talks about, showing favoritism.
Partial,
but I don't want to even present the opportunity to do that. Now, I do know how much money comes in. I do know what the budget is. So I would say is one, try to talk to a lot of people. So the first thing I did was I went to 2 CPAs that I knew that work for churches or that do a bunch of church books. Mm-hmm. And I said, explain it to me. Pretend I don't know anything. How is it supposed to work? So I think
that's gold.
The problem is I was learning it while the plane's on fire and I'm trying to put out flames or things.
And so the
bags of money are flying out the windows.
The bags of money. So I would say is you need to have a really good sense. I'd also say, so the business side of it, I would also try to find somebody that you trust, that you can go and talk to that has run maybe a financial planner. There's one guy in particular that was a CEO. There is a lot of pressure you have to lead. I would just ask them, how do you manage your people? How do you do benefits? Mm-hmm. So I would talk to people that are in leading, how they make the decisions they come away with. That was really, really helpful because no one tells you that. When you're in ministry and you're just working with people and then you realize, oh my, I got to pick a healthcare plan. Oh my, I got to know what we're going to do with these funds, and this money. Should we do it this way? How do we do this? What's the rules on this? I wish I would have known a lot more.
Yeah.
And then when they explain stuff, I'm like, oh, this makes sense why we do it this way. Now it all clicks.
Yeah.
I knew the premise of it, but I've not been the one responsible for it.
Yeah.
Let me just put a plug in for Cultivate really quick, because when in our system we don't plant churches ourselves as an organization. We work with a local church to send out church planters. And within that, we have a team of over 70 coaches now,
Correct.
Bruce. And these coaches are guys just exactly like what you're talking about that have been through it. They've done it. They know what to do. And I would just encourage those church planters, because we're very entrepreneurial. We go out, we just do it. Don't do it alone. Yeah. Get that advice, get that back, and get that coaching.
Yeah, I think also a lot of times when you're on a staff role, you just check your inbox every 2 weeks and there's a check or a stub for your paycheck, and you haven't thought about
how it got there.
Correct. It's like I check out the trash can, Monday evening. I come back from work Tuesday and it's empty. I don't think about what happens to it.
That's magic.
Yeah. And I think the first time that you have to figure out budgets, that you have to figure out, bylaws, articles of incorporation, benefits, as you talk about, because I think pastors, as shepherds, we want to provide the most extensive benefits we can to take care of the people that we work with. And business people say, well, you can't give that type of benefit in the real world, especially as the staff grows. It becomes an albatross, and to have to deal with those things.
It does. You're right. And I think that was a huge learning lesson. So there were a lot of things like that I learned on the job rather quickly, but I found the best people I knew, and I asked them as many questions as I could, as long as they would take my phone calls, because I was annoying them with questions.
Oh, yeah. They're
just because I needed to know.
This guy again.
I know, he hasn't figured it out yet.
Hey, it has those things like on iPhone where it says probably spam.
Yeah.
So,
with your name.
I know, it was. So you learn a lot on that. So that was one thing. Two, I would say, is, would you say the big thing I learned?
And not necessarily the big, but what were some of the lessons that you wish they had taught you 7 years ago?
So I would say the back end office stuff, you need to have a good grasp of that. Two, you need to know how your church is set up. So I think what kind of everything's like, well, I'm not going to really write anything down, and we just kind of all know intuitively. That's not a good model. Your bylaws need to spell out clearly, because now we haven't had this, Lord willing, we haven't had any major problems, but there needs to be clarity on what to do. So going through like a transition that we did, the bylaws were really important, because this is what we are all agreeing to.
They're the governing laws that you've agreed to.
So I would just say, I would really consider, okay, do you know them? Do you know how you're set up? I think some of these things are important because they help you understand what decisions to make and how to make them. So it's giving you tools on the back end. So we actually redid our bylaws to reflect what we're doing in our office.
I see.
And what our church is. So I met with the chairman, I met with the board. Hey guys, this is what I'm thinking. What do you guys think? Our pastors, and we just talked about it. So I think you got to get a level of clarity about that. One of the things,
that's really good.
Yeah, on the back end, that was a big lesson I had to learn really fast. So it was in the first 3 months, we changed a lot of stuff in a good way to get everybody to have buy-in of things that we noticed that could
be problem
give a lot more clarity.
Yeah, and especially with church planting, because like you said, the pastor, you're just the one guy. A lot of these guys are working bivocational. They're not even full time at the church yet. But you kind of have to set up all these bylaws, and I mean the government paperwork. If you want to be registered charity, you want to be 501c3, you want to go through all these. You have to have them, and sometimes we run the risk of just kind of copy pasting someone else's stuff, sending it in, and calling it a day. But I love what you're saying, because you need to really take your time. I mean, Bruce, you were a lawyer for many years, so you know the importance of what's written down and what's said is going to be binding.
So about a month ago, I got a request to consult for this group. And so the elders wanted to fire the lead pastor. And so before they could, the lead pastor fired the elders. And so
you can't break up with me. I break up with you first.
They called me in to help them in this. And I said, send me the bylaws. And so I looked through the bylaws. The elders didn't have the right to convene the board without the senior pastor, the lead pastor, calling a board meeting. And there was no exemption. There was no type of exception for circumstance. And the pastor didn't have the authority in the bylaws to fire the elders. And I'm like, yeah, you guys.
Everybody did it wrong.
Everybody's action here was wrong. But I think what you're speaking of is really good about the importance of our church planters understanding that besides teaching the Bible and besides being spiritual leaders, there's also an aspect, especially as church planters, when you don't have staff to cover all of the business aspects of running a small business, which the organization is.
Bruce, would you say that one of the first key kind of expenses, or I would say hires, part-time hires, for lack of a better word, would be an accountant or accounting service to kind of...
I think for a young church bookkeeper, it should be sufficient. Yeah. And I think what Ryan was saying and what you were saying also, Brian, about the context, like if you have bylaws that you got from your sending church, or for example, we have sample bylaws that we make available, and people just filing them with the Secretary of State or whatever the governing body is, but they've never actually gone through and say, is this what we're actually doing? Is this what makes sense in our context?
Because every church is going to be unique, and every leadership team is going to be unique. And like you said, Ryan, you got to work within what you're doing and what God's doing through your church, your organization.
Yeah. And one of the things I also really appreciate that you're saying is the willingness to ask questions. I think so often people, when they're in that role as the lead pastor, they're reluctant to ask people.
Well, people are supposed to ask us the question. We're the lead pastor.
Correct. They want to appear as the authority. And they're reluctant to ask, especially people within the local church who have a wealth of information about all sorts of subjects that we as pastors don't have information about.
Yeah, that's the biggest mistake you'll make, is pretending to know it all. I 100% agree. I think you learn. So I learned how the church worked because we were in the middle of something, and the bylaws were really important. At the same time, though, is doing the hard work at the beginning will set yourself up to potentially mitigate any risk. And so I like that. I want to try to mitigate as much risk as possible.
Yeah.
That's on me. So it's a little extra work, but it's worth it. Talk to an attorney, talk to your board. I mean, talk to the people that are your elders at your church, or people that are vested. Say, hey, this is what I believe we're going to be set up like. This is how we want to do it. Let's talk about it. Let's write it down. And then I think it does get a lot of buy-in, though, from your leadership team, that they feel part of it.
Yeah.
And the beautiful
because
thing,
they truly are part of it. That's the thing. It's not just them.
At any point, if the bylaws need to change, we could change it as a board.
Yeah.
Like, we can do it. It's not a big deal.
Yeah.
And that was the fearful thing of, well, I don't want to set it. It's not set it and forget it. You are constantly changing what the organization, like some of the rules, how you do it, or what's best.
And even the board members themselves, I don't know how you do it here, but a lot of churches have, rotation within church boards. It's like you serve for a term, for lack of a better term.
That's the right term. It is it's term.
And then, you can re-up it or whatever. And there's not, in ours at least, there's no limits, but it does say, after a year, you can be on or off or whatever. Board members.
Yeah, Ryan, you and I were chatting as we were just walking down the hallway long before we started recording this, and you made comment that you hadn't had to fire staff, that God had orchestrated so the people.
There were some that I had to, unfortunately. We had to lay off quite a bit of people at the beginning.
Sure.
But as long as there's no reasons why they should be terminated, their employment, that they break in their handbook or whatever.
Yeah.
But what I think is too on the staff is you got to give, what I was sharing, there are people that over the last couple of years, what you want to do is you want to coach them in a way where you help them see kind of the bigger picture and just see if this is the place for them. Like, I think the one side I would say is there can be to be overtly business driven so much that you just get rid of the Holy Spirit altogether.
Yeah.
And
you don't want to do that.
So I think for me, it was learn how the business is supposed to work, learn the rules. What is it supposed to do? But then I was sharing with you, Bruce, I was like, there are people though that are maybe not in a great spot, and being at the church shouldn't be the best spot for them now, or maybe God's called them to a new thing. And you just help them to kind of come to that. And if they're there, hey, how do I help you thrive as an employee? And if it's not, hey, what's God got for you next? But I think there's a level in church ministry, because these are people that are ministering to people and they go to your church. Like, they're part of your fellowship.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of guys, in a lot of churches I see, that's a mistake. They treat the employees as like commodities. And so what they do is they're like, hey, you can't give me this service at this level, so you're out.
Yeah.
And it's like, well, okay, well, that's not healthy. And so when I see people that are doing it. Now, at the very beginning, we had to right size the church budget and staff, and it was probably about 50% of the staff had to do it. We offered different things for them to do in that respect, but I would say over the last couple of years, God makes it very abundant. You have conversations, you're talking about it, and you just want to see them being sent off. And so my rule of thumb is when I see somebody in a spot where it's like, hey, maybe their time at working at church is time to go, or like they feel it's time to go, how do I send them off the best way possible? Mm-hmm. Is there anything I can offer them to help them transition? What do you need from me? Because the last thing I would want for them to say, man, I just felt like I was just a tool. And I mean that in an actual tool, not like in a bad way. I was just like being used for my skill set, but they didn't really give a care about me at all.
Yeah.
Because I know how hard it is.
Caring about people, that's the big key.
Yeah, and it's like, hey, if it costs you, okay, so let's say you offer a severance. Somebody's like, hey, I'm going to leave. Well, what could you do as a church if you have the means? Could you offer them some money in the meantime till they find other employment, or could you? Do they need counseling? Mm-hmm. So I've done stuff like I think that's been helpful. We've kind of done it. Hey, do you need a month off? Yeah. Like I know that's not accessible for everybody, but if people are really going through stuff,
people are more important.
Yeah, it's more important. So you just get creative.
Yeah.
And you're telling your board what you're doing. You're not just Lone Ranger in it. Mm-hmm. You're having conversations with people that you're working with that have that are looking after the church. Like our board, I'm the only paid member. The rest are all elders that are not paid by the church, so they can have a level of independence.
Yeah.
So if I'm talking about my staff or there's a question, they need to understand what I'm doing. I'm not just doing it by myself, and I seek guidance in that. I don't just kind of say, hey, we're going to do this, this, and that. So, but I would say though, as you're praying and you're asking God, these are people, you want them to thrive in whatever God's called them, because work is not the problem. It just might be a season that they need it. It's time for them to go, but you want them to say, hey, I really enjoyed my experience there. It was really good. And I've talked to staff that have moved on from Calvary. I see them come back into the church, or they'll call me and they'll talk to me and say, hey, you know what? I really liked working there. Yeah. Like I want them, not that I'm trying to be to be their best buddy, but what I want them to say is I did have a good experience working there. Now you might not get with every person, but don't treat them as commodities. Or I know some pastors, it's just moving chess pieces around.
Yeah.
And it's man, that your congregation is going to pick up on that because your staff is going to feel that.
Yeah.
Don't do that. It's not worth it in the long run.
Don't do that. All right. You heard it here first. Hey, we're running out of time here, Bruce and Ryan. I really appreciate you being on the show. One last final thing that you would say to our guys out there. You've said so many good and wonderful things. But one final thing that you would share with our listeners.
Okay. So if you're a church planter, what I would say to you is, if you're starting out, make sure you understand what friendship means. And this is what I mean. Pastors are isolated individuals that think they got to do everything themselves. And you feel like, hey, I got the mantle and I'm running with it. Don't do that. You're gonna burn yourself out before you know it. What you need to do is you need to discover, the scripture talks about what it means to be a friend and have a friend.
Yeah, John 15.
If you, as a church planter, they might not go to your church, find somebody out there, but really develop real friendships.
Wow.
If you can do it.
That's pretty good.
Another nugget.
That's pretty good.
Don't try to do it on your own. And I never knew I didn't have a friend until I actually met one. Then I'm like, that's what a friend is supposed to be. So I think just, try to find a friend. And I would recommend somebody older than yourself.
Great. Bruce, one more final thing before we close.
There isn't one older than myself at this age. Yeah, Ryan, you've got all of this responsibility now in the transition and pastoring a large church. And what's been the best part for you?
I think for me, the best part of it has been, really, I don't feel like it's like I'm really working.
Yeah.
You
love it.
You love it, and to the point that you don't feel the pressure. There's a lot of pressure. Don't get me wrong. And there's a lot of mistakes, potential for mistakes. You're always watching everything, but I don't feel like it rests on me. And so one of the things I love about it is I've discovered another lesson I tell them: be yourself. Don't try to copy somebody else.
Yeah.
Be yourself.
Good word, man. Thanks so much for being on the show, Ryan. Bruce, as always, thanks for being with us.
Thanks
and
for
looking forward to
working
with you in the Cultivate program. And if you're out there, you need a friend, hit us up, cultivatechurchplanting.com. Plant a church. But anyway, thanks for being on the show, Ryan. Thanks, Bruce.
Brian.
Thanks for listening. The Cultivate Church Planting Podcast is part of CGN Media, a podcast network that points to Christ. Check out cgnmedia.org for more great shows and ways to support the ministry.